progress. That's always a good sign. So yes, absolutely. You are welcome to keep your camera off, keep your camera on. As I was sharing, we've had more than 40 folks sign up for this. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this. As you can see, I've got all of my emotional, well, 2 out of 3 of my emotional support animals gathered, one of whom just wants to go play with the stuffed turtles on the floor. Don't you, my darling? You know, there are lots of folks who will be watching the recording because this is right in the middle of the workday. And trust me, I get it. It's just that when you are working with these guys, if you want to have your guest speakers on with you, you have to do it while they're awake. So I just wanted to, while everyone's still kind of gathering, I wanted to give you an up close and personal with our brave explorer, Mr. Bruce. He is back home and safe, and his mommy has been doing a lot of work with, it's amazing the different things you can do with zip ties on a turtle enclosure. That's all I've got to say. So are you just so happy to be home and you've been getting all of your favorites? You've been getting all of your favorites, haven't you? And you've had so much to share with your mommy about how to be an intuitive pet parent, haven't you? I love you too. I love you too. I love you too. I'm gonna let you go play on the floor with I've got lots of stuffed turtles, stuffed animal scattered all over the floor that he likes to go and romance. Would you like to go and romance them now? You want to go and romance them now? Okay, so I just wanted to start good vibes for today here, and of course over here. There you go, Bruce. There you go. Okay, my love. So wanting to get started, of course, my name is Shannon Cutts. I'm with Animal Love Languages. I'm an animal sensitive and intuitive, a Reiki master practitioner, a lifelong lover of animals and nature. I want to show you my shirt today. It's in honor of my first ever workshop. It says, see if I can do this, I want to be loved by you. How cute is that, right? I thought that would set just the right tone for our workshop today. And we are going to dive into intuitive pet parenting. What the heck does that mean? And the first thing we need to tackle is what I call the elephant in the room word. It is the word intuition. What is intuition? Do we all have it? Is it something that you can learn to access on demand, so to speak? You know, in my own personal experience, I came into the world and I wasn't what you would call an evolved soul. I really didn't know that I had intuition. I'd never heard that word. And, you know, not to date myself too much, but I'm turning 51 in a couple months. And so I kind of grew up in that era, that what I call the saltwater taffy generation, where we're kind of poised in between, you know, really just left brain everything. And this movement that many of us are experiencing now into an era where we're trying to make friends with our right brains. We're interested in what they're up to. We want to know if perhaps we've got some superpowers tucked in there that we have not been aware of up until now. And so it's been a process for me that's taken place over many generations. Well, I guess we could say that if I had proof that I had past lives, but let's just say many decades to start to explore the uncharted territory of the right brain, which is intuition's home. So I'm a longtime student of, and forgive me if I pause just here and there just to let a couple folks into our waiting room. I thought I had it all set up so you guys could just join, and well, long story short, no, I did not. So here we are. But the first thing I wanted to share is I'm a long-time student of Sonia Choquette, and some of you may be familiar with her. I know during my practicum that took place over the last few months, I did many complimentary animal communication sessions with friends from our Good Vibes tribe. And Sonia teaches that we have 3 primary ways that we kind of interact with ourselves and with the other beings in our world, animals, human animals, non-human animals, and with situations in our life and with our surroundings. And those three primary ways are our intuition. So our intuition, what she likes to call, and I love, our vibes. That happens to be a really trendy word right now, but it really is short for vibrations. So our vibrations, which are very sensory, and we'll get into this in more detail as we head into our exploration today, but our vibrations are the most fundamental way that we interact with ourselves, the others in our world, situations, and our environment. They are also the most direct pathway to communicate across the great species divide, if you will, the interspecies barrier, right, my love? And so that's really where we're going to be focusing. But I also want you to be aware of the other two, because these are the two that tend to be the most problematic. The first are emotions, and the second are thoughts. Now, emotions and thoughts are kind of like if you've ever had two pets and one likes to kind of creep up on the other and kind of like, you know, nip at their butt or rile them up a little bit or sneak over to their food bowl and just to get a reaction out of them. So emotions are kind of like that. Our emotions drive our thoughts. And emotions and thoughts can be in cahoots with one another. They can also be working at cross purposes. Emotions are, you know, E/motion. They're energy in motion. We are energy. You are energy. I am energy. Pearl is energy. Bruce, who's trying to romance my gray house slipper right now, he is energy. We can be in stasis. We can be calm. We can be zen. We can be meditating. Right? That's not a place you see. Oh, honey, he doesn't like my little earbuds right now. In his infinite wisdom, my neighbor behind me decided that today was a great day for outdoor construction, specifically carpentry. So I'm wearing my earphones today, and Pearl isn't in love with them. So it just occurred to me, actually, for those of you who are watching and not just listening along, that these about the same size and shape as cockatiel eggs, which is total digression and something to look at on a different day. It's a whole different workshop. So emotion is what happens when we get moving. It's an energetic response to us living our lives. We have an emotional response. We can have emotions that we prefer. We can have emotions that we dislike and want to avoid, but emotions are kind of the precursor to thoughts. And you can notice this because when you feel like you think of an emotion, like think of a time right now when you felt really, really sad. Like for me, it was when I discovered that Bruce went missing when he escaped. I felt really, really sad. And you know, that emotion is it provokes kind of a whole body experience, you know, and it actually, in its purest form, it actually just kind of silences the mind for just a moment. An emotion can silence our mind because it's such a full-on experience. It just stops everything. It's like a red light, you know, it just stops everything for just a minute. And then the mind gets going and it starts to explain the emotion to us. It starts to explain to us, well, you're sad because your box turtle went missing. And then it starts to extrapolate off of that. And it's like, and that's probably because you're a sucky pet parent. And that's probably because you neglected to keep up with his habitat. And that's probably because he hates you. And that's probably because he doesn't like the food you're serving, you know, or whatever it is. And we can do the same thing with really ecstatic emotions, you know, like let's use the day Bruce was found and I was running down the street in my flip-flops in the middle of the afternoon to go I literally flung myself down on the grass, nose to nose with Bruce, and was like practically crying in this stranger's front yard. And again, my mind was quiet for a minute because I was having such a full on, everything was in motion to the point where my mind like couldn't make sense of it, which I believe is one reason why our culture today is so addicted to strong things that bring up strong emotions, like really radical talk radio, extreme political parties and opinions about those. Right now we're in October, at least while I'm recording this, and we're gathering here live, and we've got Halloween movies coming out. It's like, you know, I saw an ad the other day on my Netflix that says stay home and scream, and I'm like, ooh, maybe let's not stay home. That doesn't sound fun to me, but a lot of people really get into that because it actually does stop their crazy, shattering mind for a minute to have these strong emotional experiences. But then the mind gets going. And the more the mind gets going, the farther we get away from those emotions. And the mind is going to say, oh, well, you're so happy because your box turtle was found. And that's because he loves you so much. And that's because you've been looking for him for 7 days. And that's because then this and that and the other, or whatever it is, you can substitute your own experience for this. And what is important to understand about intuition or vibration, emotions and thoughts is that they're hierarchical. There you go. Vibrations or vibes, they're subtle. And in fact, they're living in this vibrational level is the precursor to animal communication. It's also a great aid to better communication with our own species, but it's definitely the foundation you have to have in place before you can start learning how to talk back and forth across the species divide. They're very subtle though, and they're easily tuned out. They're easily out shouted, out just, I can't think of the word, but it's like, you know, it's a difference between like a little sparkler that you buy at a roadside stand on 4th of July and professional fireworks. Vibrations, vibes, they're like the little sparkler. Emotions are like the fireworks show, and thoughts are the densest, heaviest. They're like the mechanics that puts it all together. There's not a lot of actual life in thoughts. The life comes from the emotions, and it's important to understand this. Sorry, sweetie. When we're starting to develop our intuition on behalf of our pets, and especially if we have multiple pets in a family, especially if we have multiple species in a family, right? We've got, like, for instance, my immediate interspecies family, we've got 4 different species, 5 if you count Flash Gordon, our dachshund. And so that's a lot of different energy and vibrations and inputs, information and input to tune into and to manage. So it's important to understand the difference because it's easy to confuse them. So let's get a little bit more granular here, and we'll start with examples of emotions in our pets. And here is where you're going to start to see how emotions and vibes can overlap just a little bit. Think of one of your animals right now. Of course, I encourage you to choose one animal, even if you have many, because it's easier to just focus on one animal as we're working through everything, and then you can apply it to all your other animals, and even to wildlife, even to family members' animals, right, my love, even to house plants, which are all delicious, aren't they? And so let's, think about a time when maybe you looked over at your animal and you thought, boy, I'm going to use my animal, Pearl looks really, really lonely right now, really sad right now. Have you ever had an experience like that, where you just looked at you looked at your animal and you said, my animal just looks, my pet, Malty, I'll use my tortoise Malty, I look at her and I think, Malty is smiling. Have you ever looked at your animal and you've really literally thought to yourself, oh my goodness, you know, Flash Gordon is smiling right now. Yeah, yeah. So what is delivering that information to you? There's two questions here. What is delivering that information to you? And what's the part of you that doubts that it's true? Because see, we've got a left brain, right brain interaction, a little bit of an argument going on here. You know, there's a wonderful, I'm not a scientist. I don't even want to get into discussing my math and my science scores when I was still in school, but I have a great love of the way that science approaches answering questions. And one of the principles that I learned way back in the day when I was watching the movie Contact is Occam's razor. All else being equal, the simplest explanation tends to be the right one. Now, if you just look at your animal and you think, you know, my tortoise is smiling, or my dog is happy, what is it that's interfering with your acceptance of that as true? What is it that tries to talk you out of it? If all else being equal, if all else is equal, wouldn't it make sense that the simplest explanation is that that's true? That your dog is smiling, that your tortoise is happy, that Pearl does want to go back to his casa and have a little treat, huh? Yeah. So it's your left brain. Your right brain is tuning in right away. It's actually having a communication with your animal, a subtle vibrational communication where you are picking up your animal's vibes, your animal's vibration, your animal's energy, and maybe a tinge of your animal's emotions. These are all sensory states of being that we share in common. Come here, my love. Why don't you sit here and sing to my toes? So I hope all of you are okay with a soundtrack of solo cockatiel singing, because you just never get away from it around here, nor would we want to, right? So the only thing that exactly, Judy, I love what you shared in the comment. Your dog Bella's face looks so happy when she smiles, and you feel it. And our ego, loud brain, tries to put us into a logical space. Why? Why is that? Why is that? It's because this is what we've been taught since we were old enough to go to school. We sat in a classroom, or maybe those of us who are going through school and we're homeschooling our kids, but we were in a classroom of sorts. We probably had materials, either ebooks or textbooks or packets of paper or some kind of a curriculum of some sorts. And if your schooling was anything like mine, it probably focused on either learning all about what happened in the past, memorizing dates, names, events, learning formulas that were created by somebody else way back in the day, and how to, you know, multiplication tables and all of those sorts of chemicals and all kinds of different things, nouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives. Or you were focused on what might happen in the future. And that was the reason that you were learning all of these multiplication tables and your nouns and verbs and adjectives, is because you might need to use them in the future. The one thing that was missing was right here, right now, in the present. And that's where the right brain lives. The right brain is like a river, and the left brain has its place, but it's kind of like the dam that the beavers build across the river. And there is, you know, we need both. We definitely need both. If we live just in our right brain, you know, we're going to love floating along the river, but we're not going to have any plan in place for when it turns into the rapids or it dries up. So we need both. But the thing about, you know, our education as human beings is it mostly tends to take place in a classroom of sorts. It tends to focus on the past or the future. It kind of ignores the present. And it funnels information into our awareness almost exclusively through the left brain. And so that's how words like vibes become trendy and fluffy, and they get paired with things like unicorns and rainbows and clouds, and you mostly see them on t-shirts for little girls, and sometimes little boys these days, or maybe even non-binary, non-gender. I mean, rainbows, this is a pen I used when I was writing notes for this workshop to try to keep me light, to kind of try to keep me more in my right brain, so my left brain wouldn't start freaking me out and telling me I couldn't do this, and who am I to be a teacher, and who am I to share information with people and pretend like I know anything. So, it's about intuitive pet parenting. In fact, this is why we want animals in our lives, right? Because animals keep us in this present moment space. They live right here and right now, and they want us to live right here and right now, which is why in animal communication, one of the first things that we learn, and the very first thing that we experience the very first time we have an actual interspecies communication, is that it happens quickly and it happens in real time. It's happening right now, and that our animals, they want us to learn this. They are the teachers and we are their students, and so we gravitate to our animals because we know, well, we gravitate to them for many reasons, primarily because of cuteness, right? Primarily because of cuteness, but also because we instinctively know that they have valuable things to teach us that will help us feel more balanced, that will help take us out of a realm where, especially for those of us that tend to be highly sensitive, that's kind of where my specialization exists with animal communication, is with the highly sensitive pet and the highly intuitive human, which is why I don't think it's an accident that we're all together right now. But, they give us a permission to get curious about the rest of us. I often share that the first time I had an experience of animal communication, which was back when I hired an animal communicator, long before I realized I was going to pursue this as a calling and a life path for myself. It felt like there's these little parts of myself that were starting to wake up that I did never know existed before now. And when I started actually learning to talk with animals in real time, it was like I suddenly discovered this whole package of programs that had been installed in my operating system, and nobody had ever told me they were there. And I remember one of my mentors very early on in animal communication, because I tend to get these kind of what I call data dumps, which isn't a very glamorous term, but the information just kind of drops in, and I just kind of have what they call a knowing. I just kind of know a whole bunch of stuff without really knowing how I know it. And one of my mentors was helping me kind of figure out how I get information, how my side of the interspecies conversation happens. And she said, "Do you notice how quickly it is, how quickly it comes through? It comes through quickly for a reason, because our brain, our thoughts are denser, lower vibration energy, and it takes the mind a little time to get going. And usually it takes an emotional instigator to get our mind, to start churning out thoughts that can distract us or confuse us or do whatever it is that they do. But vibes get in there so quickly, they're so immediate, that they literally get in there before the mind has a chance to even get started. So communication happens simply, it happens quickly, and this is why the next time you look at your dog, Bella, Miss Judy, next time you look at Bella and you say, "Oh, she looks so happy, she looks like she's smiling," say it out loud. Bella is smiling. That's one of the key things that I do to continue to hone my interspecies communication skills, is I say it out loud. "Wow, look, Maltese smiling," or "Boy, Pearl sure looks grumpy." you know, um, intuitive information comes in all the same ways that we get information from other humans. And this is a little bit off of the, I did actually, because I am like such a newbie at running workshops, I want you to know I did actually write out a whole schedule of what we're going to talk about today. I'm jumping around a little bit with this pen, which I just adore. So, you know, we want to start verbalizing what we're feeling, because that creates its own energy of emotion, and it connects us to our right brain. You know, when we have a real-time thought, oh, my tortoise is smiling, and we say it out loud, Malty is smiling. It's like I can almost see my little, okay, this is my right hand, this is my right brain, this is my left, okay, whatever. I get confused because I'm looking at myself, which is so strange. So one of the things about Zoom I've never gotten used to, but my right brain turns on. It's like it gets all excited because I'm noticing it and I'm paying attention to it and I'm tuning in. And it feels really good. It feels like I've just made a connection with my pet. I've made a connection with Malty. You know, so the main ways that we communicate as human beings are through words, through thoughts that turn into words, that turn into conversations, or in some cases, monologues. And we have all these other ways that we can communicate, which is why when I was in college and then after college, I joined Toastmasters and I was learning public speaking, you know, and my teachers would say, pay attention to more than just your words. Pay attention to your stance. Pay attention to what you're doing with your hands. Pay attention to, you know, take a video of yourself and watch yourself talking, which I never loved doing that, but notice your facial expressions. I mean, are you just standing there staring at people, just saying your memorized speech and just no expression whatsoever? Or are you smiling? Is all of you on board with what you're sharing? You know, 90%, I don't know if that's an exact fact, but we've all learned that 90% of communication is nonverbal. And so it's kind of funny and a little bit sad that as human animals, we spend most of our time with the 10%, with the words and with the thoughts. And I truly believe that our animals are in our lives to help us remember that we have so many more ways to communicate, ways that are more accurate, ways that are more fun, ways that are more useful, ways that are going to elevate our vibration, ways that can make us feel better and direct our communications in ways that are beneficial for ourselves and for our animals and for the people in our lives and for the planet. And it involves understanding, you know, we communicate with what we see, what we hear, what we sense, which is, you know, the feelings, our emotions, with touch and with taste. And also with what I was talking about earlier, our deep intuitive knowings, you know, our vibes, our vibrations, the things that we just know without knowing how we know them. You know, one good way to tell if it's your vibes, and this is a litmus test that I use, if I'm having an intuitive download, or if I'm getting a vibration, if I'm getting a vibe about something, I can't talk, my mind can't talk me out of it. It just, and I see this a lot. Here's a great example of this. I see this a lot when I'm working with people as in animal communication sessions. Someone will come to me, they'll say, I just have a feeling that my cat, the vet said she was fine, but I think there's something wrong. I never question that, ever, ever, ever. That's a vibe. That's the pet parent's intuition. kicking in. It's something that's happening for a reason, and it's always something you want to pay attention to. Here's another fun example from, my animal communication sessions when a pet parent has a question for their animal. And so I ask their animal the question. I share the answer with the pet parent, who then says, I knew they were going to say that. Okay. I never questioned that, but I always like to ask, okay, how did you know? So a vibration or a vibe, your intuition is something that your mind cannot talk you out of. Now, your mind can distract you out of noticing it. Your mind can make you doubt it. Your mind can do its best to help you ignore it completely and not notice it. But your mind cannot talk you out of knowing it. And that's a really important point to bookmark. You may not like what you know. You may not want to know what you know. And I'll share, this is it's the best example I have. It's not an easy one to share, but many of you know that my father passed a couple months ago. And it was during kind of right when the hospitals are trying to decide whether to keep the full on lockdown and not let anybody else in, or go ahead and let a couple, visitors in. And so they finally decided to open it up and let me come and visit my dad. And when I walked into the room and I looked at him, I just knew this is it. I just knew it. I didn't want to know it. I sure did try my best to let people around me, including his therapist and some of his doctors and the care team that we hired and my mom. I wanted to be talked out of it, but I just knew. And actually, because of my animal communication training, because of my years of studying with Sonia Choquette, I recognized that vibe was actually there to help me. It was actually there to support me. It was actually there to help guide the decisions I would make and how I would interact with my father and where my focus would be, which turned into, it was all about his comfort and honoring his wishes versus trying to do aggressive things to bring him back. This is very applicable to animals, especially when there's serious health issues or end of life issues going on as well. But, I didn't want to know. I was like, can you just send that intuitive vibe back? Because I don't really want it. I would prefer to live in my dreamland and believe he's going to get better. But it was actually a messenger of love for me. It was actually, I'm grateful that I was open enough to receive it. And it actually ended up being a huge blessing to my family in so many ways. I could do a whole workshop just on that. But so vibes are always there in the background, no matter what your mind, your emotions, your friends, your family, or in fact, if you notice yourself running around asking everybody else for guidance on something, it's probably a vibe you're trying to work your way out of knowing. You're like, oh, I'm going to go ask my best friend. I'm going to go ask my therapist. I'm going to go ask my mentor. I'm going to go ask, my neighbor. I'm going to ask my mom. I'm going to ask my brother, whoever. Yeah, it's probably a vibe. I hate to break it to you, but it's probably a vibe. Now, what happens when we're trying to ignore our vibes, or we're trying to talk ourselves out of them, or we don't know we're having one, is it's what I like to call like a mental and emotional pinball. I think maybe some of us, I certainly know I am, are old enough to remember the really fun old school pinball machines where you drop the little token in and then you start pulling up. It's actually a really good upper body workout. You start pulling the little things out and trying to get the ball to go here and there and the other. That's what it's like when your emotions in your mind are going round 50. Well, it could be this and it might be that. Here's another sign that you're ignoring your intuition, is that you're coming up with all these different scenarios. Well, it could be this, it could be that. And it starts to feel like you're all over the map, like you're kind of going a little bit mentally and emotionally crazy because there's a pinhole map. There's like, oh, it could be this, or it could be that, and it could be something else. And she said this, and he said that, and how do I know? Or, who am I to say? It's like, okay, we're just having a pinball party up there. What's underneath all this? And there's even another level of this, is that, like I was talking about when we started this workshop, that kind of reactivity is very addicting. It's very accepted. It's very socially acceptable. We're binge watching this, and we're, consuming that, and we've got 50 things. I mean, I say today, these have become like our pets, our little smartphones. So it's like it's beeping at us, and we think we have to drop everything and give it our full attention, even if it's just a little bleep from Facebook or something. And so that's another place where we have to start, as intuitive pet parents, you have to start. And this is exactly what happened to me with Bruce. And I'll share that in a minute, but you have to stop for a minute and go, wait a minute. What's underneath all of this? Sometimes it is something more complicated, like, oh my goodness, we went through that with our previous docs in JP Morgan, when it was either another extreme back surgery or it was palliative care and assisted passing. And it was like, oh, we had such a hard time. Finally, I hired an animal communicator to help us. And then it became quite simple because we already knew what JP Morgan wanted. We just didn't want to know what we knew. So we were doing this incredible, exhausting mental pinball and crying and tripping all over each other, when really the answer was very simple. And we already knew it. And it was like we just kind of didn't want to know. But once we all acknowledged that we knew it, everything became manageable, livable again. And it was just about, doing the things that JP Morgan said he wanted in order to have the most loving and peaceful transition. So it's easy to get addicted in that cycle, get stuck in that cycle, and that doesn't serve our pets, and it doesn't serve us. It keeps them stuck in a cycle of being misunderstood and not being able to clearly communicate their needs and their wants to us. And it keeps us stuck because we're not trusting what we know. And that sucks, and it feels horrible. Sometimes the simplest explanation really is the right one. And the other piece is that, it's so socially acceptable to be addicted to this drama that we may find that other people, especially if we're co-parenting a pet with someone, we may find that the other folks that we share our space and our pets with, they may not be on board with the answer is simple. Let's just all calm down and kind of center and get focused and admit that we know. There's such a thing as we like staying in the drama. It's distracting. It feels like being alive to be playing mental and emotional pinball, but it doesn't feel good. And so being an intuitive pet parent sometimes means developing an inner strength that you didn't necessarily know that you had. Maybe you didn't want to develop it. It means being the dissenting voice sometimes when it comes to a pet's care. And these are, it's fun, learning to develop our intuition is fun. And, it's the difference between writing with this and writing with this, which one's more fun? Definitely this one. But sometimes we need this, and intuition is going to help us tune in no matter what it is, that's going on. So here's some other ways to just practice in the next week and start, because it really starts with, and this is what your homework is going to be focused on too, is it really starts with just tuning in simply in the present moment and starting to notice what you already know. And that is, Does my pet want a treat? Does my pet want to walk? Does my pet want playtime? Does my pet want a nap? If you're Pearl, does my pet want to bite me right now? Yes, he does. Right? He's always fighting is fun. I love to bite. Start noticing what do you think your pet wants right now? And then answer quickly before your mind gets in the way and starts to conflate everything. Just start noticing your pet's energy, just their vibe. When you're with, just notice, do they feel like they have high energy right now, that they want to play, they want to explore, they want to adventure? Does my pet feel like they have low energy right now? And maybe they want a nap, maybe they want to cuddle with you, maybe they just want to have some alone time. Does my pet want a treat, or is my pet hungry or thirsty? These are basic, simple things, but the thing is with human beings is that we haven't been card-carrying members of the food chain for quite some time. So we forget that for our animals, these simple things make up the majority of their day-to-day. It's a little less natural for companion animals because, they do get catered meals and temperature control and some amount of protection from predation and pests and things like that. But still, life is pretty simple when you're not hooked on Netflix or managing 3 or 4 of these little guys all day long. For our animals, their biggest entertainment a lot of the times, especially if my animal communication sessions have anything to say about it, their biggest entertainment is us. We're like, Shannon TV is like really entertaining for Pearl, Maltine, Bruce, and Flash. So we're going to talk a lot more about that next time and how to start picking, because the way that our pets are acting isn't always about them. It can also be, there's a lot of ways that our pets start teaching us through how they're acting, through the expressions on their face. But first we have to start noticing. So just this week, just start noticing and just challenge yourself to, before you just kind of go on autopilot and do your thing throughout the day, just start, look over your pet or just be in your pet's presence and just notice their energy. Like, how do I think my pet is feeling right now? Like, what comes up first when I is my pet hungry? Are they thirsty? Or do they want to cuddle? Do they want to be left alone? Because a lot more. You're getting those vibrations all the time. You're just not tuning in. So it's about adjusting your radio dial. Start tuning that frequency to the higher vibration station and just start noticing, what do I already know about my animal that I'm just not aware of knowing? And so there's a little exercise, and it might seem very basic in your homework, but I would invite you to give it a chance anyway, because there's lots of ways that intuition has already shown up in your life over the last week, or even maybe today, definitely over the last several years. So, and over time, your intuition will develop a little kind of a secret language with you. Like, for instance, my intuition tends to, I don't love this, but it tends to show up in the form of stomach aches. I have struggled with chronic, sometimes extremely debilitating stomach aches for years. And while they're not completely cured, I've of course gone the traditional route, looked at the Western medicine, then I went to the alternative route, looked at the Eastern medicine. Now I'm starting to notice that they show up a lot of times because I'm ignoring something my intuition wants me to know. And if I can catch it early, the earlier I catch it, the less severe my tummy pain is going to be, and the faster it will resolve. So start noticing, how for you it might be headaches. A lot of times it's some kind of sensory body physical experience. Because if your brain and your emotions are busy distracting you with mental and emotional pinball, the only way your intuition is going to be able to get your attention is then through your body. So a lot of us have physical symptoms because we're ignoring our vibes, essentially. So you can start noticing that too. It's like, what was the first thing that clued me in? You know, how did I pick up on whatever it was that I knew? And so there's a little exercise in your homework that just guides you through the building blocks of kind of understanding a little bit about how your personal secret intuitive language may have gotten your attention in the past and kind of what to start looking for. And then I'm going to leave you with this here for this particular session. In order to start to, because it's one thing, I realize I keep starting a sentence and then cutting myself off, which is sure wonderful to listen to. Apologize for that. I'm just so excited. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, and I'm so nervous, but I'm so grateful for you guys for hanging in there with me. This is also very exciting, isn't it? And another thing that will happen, we'll talk more about this next time, is when you notice when I get a little like anxious and excited, somebody starts screaming. So we'll talk a lot more about that next time. But before I can start to tune into my intuition for myself, for my animals, for anything I want to use my intuition for, I need 3 things in my life. If I want to do it consistently, if I don't just, the drive-by intuitive vibe is great. Maybe it saves me from being in a car accident or, missing that important meeting. But if I want to start tuning in consistently and really take the friendship of my vibes and really recognize that they're just there to help me learn and grow and have more fun and experience a higher vibration in life and guide me towards more of what I love and less of what brings me down, then I need to kind of make it a discipline. I need to make it a daily practice. And the exercise that I use for this, or the activity that I use, is called Get Quiet, Get Calm, Get Clear. And so you will find that in your homework. It takes 5 minutes at first, and that's a long time. You might need more time if you play a lot of mental and emotional pinball, but with a little practice, you can just start just think, get quiet, get calm, get clear, because that brings you out of the past or the future or the mental and emotional pinball and into the present moment. For getting quiet, I like to choose a breathing exercise. My very favorite one is Dr. Andrew Weil's 4-7-8 breathing, which you can find on YouTube. Second favorite is box breathing, mainly because it's used by Navy SEALs, and I like to think that I have something in common with Navy SEALs. This is probably the only thing that I have in common with Navy SEALs. But it's a technique that one of my coaches taught me that is also very helpful. If it can calm down a Navy SEAL, I figure it can calm me down. So that's kind of basically where I'm going with that. And then there's alternate nostril breathing. That's commonly used in yoga. There's Kalabati breathing, which is more of a there's lots of, you probably have your favorite already. If not, those are some ideas to look for, to try out, and just start with just a minute, just maybe 5 rounds of your favorite breathing activity, just to kind of get your body quiet. And then, then we want to get calm. For me, again, this is just for me, so you can decide what your favorite is. For me, I like to spend time in nature. So I might decide to do my 5 rounds of breathing. I'll walk outside and yesterday I took Bruce to the park and we went, I know, my love, I don't even need my vibes to know you want to bite me again. I took Bruce to the park and we have these marvelous, enormous live oak trees at this particular park. I mean, these guys are so big, like I could take my whole family and we could all sit on the tree trunk, and we could like climb up I mean, they're just amazing, huge trees that are so still and wise. And so I just sat on one, sat on the roots, and I just rested my back against it while I did my breathing and watched Bruce. And man, talk about instant calm and quiet. And so another idea is something called earthing, where you walk outside and you just take your shoes off, or at least get down to your socks. How about that? And, or worst case scenario, at least stand on something organic like grass or dirt or wood, as opposed to like concrete or asphalt or something like that. Just, you know, feel the connection that we have with the planet, with the place that we call home. Another activity that helps is to just sit with one hand on one of my animals, you know, and just feel their energy. If I can't go outside, if it's rainy, or we're having another heat wave, or whatever it is that's going on, or it's really cold, we can just, you know, our animals, or a house plant, just place your hand on a house. I have a corn plant that's got a pretty sturdy trunk. I could just place my hand on that plant. That's a great one. And you know, if you're in a hurry, you just need 5 minutes of clearing. You don't even have time to go outside. So find something like that and do your 5 rounds of breathing, and your whatever your thing is. Maybe for my mother, she loves playing solitaire on her iPad. That's totally fine. You know, for me, it happens to be going out in nature. For her, you know, she likes to play solitaire. So play a few rounds of solitaire, whatever it is that just calms you down. This brings you to the point where you're clear, because you're calm and you're quiet. That's when you can start tuning in to your vibes. That is in your homework this week. So that is where I will leave you. Thank you so much for being a part of our very first ever Intuitive Pet Parent workshop. So very grateful to have you along for this journey. Thank you most of all for celebrating with me as Bruce was lost and then found, or rather he escaped and went missing and went on a big adventure all the way around the block, and then came back. Very, very grateful to have had your support through that, and to be able to share all of the things that he taught me during those 7 days, and that I can now pass along to you. Okay, so we will see you next week, next Wednesday, same place, same time. If you have any questions in the interim, you know where to find me, Shannon at animallovelanguages.com. And I will also suggest, if you haven't already and you're interested, to pop over to the free tools page on the Animal Love Languages website. And there's another freebie called Animal Communication Camp. And that's a 5-day adventure. It talks a lot more about seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and knowing as different ways that we interact with our intuition, and different ways that we can communicate with animals. So if you're interested, that's out there as well. You've got 6 days to kind of play and practice, and we'll open up next week, hopefully with a little share about how everybody found the first week's information. I know it was maybe a little bit much, but I was just so excited to share, I couldn't resist. So thank you again for being with us, and we will see you again very soon. Okay, bye for now.